Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, and perhaps even good evening. Thank you so much for dropping by and joining John and myself for this amazing rigging clothing in DAZ Studio stream. And I know it's been a while, so welcome everyone that's here. For over 40 people, that is a very large audience for a DAZ Plus private stream, I have to say. Well, welcome Web Soul, Tuck, of course, very good to see you. Nico 1976, Mickey Mouse is here, how exciting. Keith Kubal, Jeff from France, Crosswind, and I believe my moderator is Mr. Brian, aka Zero Calvin, Mr. Nate, as well as Miss Julia, also here in the chat. So thank you so much for dropping by. It's been a while, and this was actually supposed to happen 2 weeks ago, this stream, but due to a scheduling conflict, the email didn't get sent out. So apologies for that. We've missed one stream, so we're gonna do it now, and I hope it's gonna be very, very cool. Yeah, rigging the lottery, Brian. That'd be exciting. Maybe we'll do that next month. I don't know. We decided on this topic because there's a lot of people want to make clothing, and there's a lot of tutorials out there of how to actually make the form of the clothing, get the OBJ done, but we don't have all that much documentation of, well, then what happens? What do you do after that? Once you take it into DAZ Studio, is transfer utility the only thing you need to do, and then you can package it as a project? And no, of course not. There's a lot of other steps to it, and thankfully we have somebody who has thousands of products on their combined stores, which is Mr. the one and only Fugazi. Wonderful to see you, John. How you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Let me just go and position your camera here slightly. There we go. Perfect.
I've moved.
You've moved.
Sorry,
That's
I was leaning forward.
Tricky that. Well, good to see you.
I moved off the X.
It's the X, and then what's up for you? Is it Y or is it Z? Tell us about that.
Oh, it depends.
Trick question, isn't it? John, aka Fugazi 1968, together with the Iron Man, they have so many products on the DAZ store, and some of them are interior sets, some of them are exteriors, and some of them are clothing products, and John is involved in basically all of them. And I thought John is going to be such a good partner to talk us through all these bits and pieces that are necessary to get a garment not only into DAZ Studio, but then also rig it properly and change things so that it works for customers. And that's what we're going to be going through step by step. So we're not going to be dealing with modeling the garment. I'll do that very quickly in Marvelous Designer. Then we're going to go and not going to deal with textures or UV mapping today either. It's literally about the garment and how it behaves and how we can make it behave inside DAZ Studio. That's the plan.
I think it's important to say that if you're creating clothes for production and sale, it's a very long and arduous process. But that doesn't mean you can't make them for your own usage. There are a lot of criteria for, making and selling clothes. And yeah, with them all stacked upon on top of each other, it really is a lengthy undertaking. Hours, days.
It's true.
Maybe even more.
And we're not even talking about all the peripheral things like, the texturing alone, the UV mapping and texturing alone, the kind of the coming up with the concept and doing things like promos and then, wrapping it all up and putting it on the store. We're not even talking about that. We're talking about all the requirements that are necessary to satisfy the vendor, like the DAZ store or Renderosity or RenderHub.
Exactly.
Yes, I know a lot of people go and say, well, I'll just let D-Force take care of most of my draping. And that's good if it's a skirt. But if you do something like, raise an arm and you've got all these streaks, these crinkles that I'm sure all of us have experienced, or things like, you dial in full body shape and all of a sudden you get weird issues with your garment as the custom character kind of grows into the garment. The garment kind of follows, but there's always things that don't quite work. So this is something that we're going to address today.
Everything must work if you're going to sell it, but if you're doing it for your own vision, me as an artist of old, when I did 2D type stuff, you get a vision in your head and can see it, and you want to make it. And when I got into the 3D side of things, I found that actually what I wanted wasn't available in one way or another. So that's when I decided I want to be able to make things.
I'm glad you did.
But what I'm trying to say is that if you have a project to do, you don't have to go through those hours and days of, grief and slog to make it, almost inch perfect. There are a lot of shortcuts you can make, and there are a lot of things you don't have to do to make a garment work for you. You can still share it with your chums and anybody you want to.
Classic example is somebody who makes a sequential story. Could be a visual novel, could be just a comic strip.
Oh, exactly.
And you think, hey, I need that particular garment so that it fits in well with my story. Say a sci-fi garment, and I just can't find what I'm looking for. It doesn't have to be perfect if you do it for yourself. If you know what to look out for, and if you know how to fix things that might not work in every perfect pose, you can still use that garment, you can still make the garment and even share it. It's just not something that's perhaps a $20 sellable product. This is the point, isn't it? But yeah,
even if you want to get to that point where you want to be selling clothes, I would suggest you do this first anyway.
Right. Yes.
Get the hang of it, get used to it, and gradually creep up to the requirements for a fully blown thing, because you might decide about 5 minutes into doing it that it's not for you.
Yes. I so recognize that. I have fun with the whole process. I really love Marvelous Designer and what it can do. I like Substance Painter to a point. I like bringing all these things together, but there's just so much work involved to turn it into a product that really works for every possibility. But let's show you the ropes here, and let's show you how we might want to get started with that. So
just one though, I'm not trying to put anyone off. I'm not trying to get rid of the competition. It's just the honest truth that it's a great deal of work.
Yes, there's a frightening amount of things you just need to know.
Yes.
Let's take a look. So I'm going to go and this is my desktop now. Hope you can all see that. Can I see it? Can I see it? I can see it. That's good. The DAS logo is in front of my face, but I hope that's okay. So that you can follow along with this a little bit, I'm going to go and use the modular configurator inside Marvelous Designer to throw a really basic shirt together. And that's the easiest way to have something that if you have Marvelous Designer, you can use this process as well. I'm going to use the regular Genesis 9 avatar for now. This is something that I would have exported as an OBJ from DAS Studio, imported here. It sets up the fit suit, and then I'll head over here to the modular configurator and grab a man's shirt, like a t-shirt here. Dropped or set in. Maybe we'll do dropped, like a little bit baggy. That poses challenges. We like a challenge, don't we, John?
No.
We don't.
No challenges.
I'll also give them long sleeves here. And that's pretty much all we do here. So now it's a matter of making this fit. And thanks to the fit suit, we can just go and use the auto fitting option. And that'll sort out both the pose as well as the where the garment is. And then we'll let it redrape. And then we have something that we can get started with. It's a really nice addition. They keep improving Marvelous Designer. I've been using it since version 4, and it just keeps getting better. I have to say, this is really nice. Let me give it a random color surface here. So there we go. So that was part 1 of the process. Then under 3D Garment, you head over to Retarget Draping, and that adjusts the size of the pieces so that it fits our avatar a little bit better. There we go. Barely visible.
See his thumb's poking again.
Bit of a thumb issue here. Let's go and set off the sim and just move that up a bit. Freezing the simulation at this point might be a little cheat. I just want to move the arms up a little bit. We can even make them shorter. Should we do that? Just make the arms a tiny bit shorter here.
Yeah, can do.
Let's try that. Arms are they mirrored here? No, they're not. Dang, brother, that's cold.
I think they might be.
Might they be? They might be, mightn't they?
I can see a connecting line.
and let's say 40 millimeters up. There, nothing intersects anymore. I like it. I'll just make this a little bit more crinkly here. There, that's our garment, right? For now?
Yeah.
Let's do that. John, do you want to talk about, let's talk about two things before we actually get to the export process. Do we want to mention rather than just this avatar, and I'm going to go and make the skin offset not 3, I'm going to make that 0 millimeters. Do we want to mention...
0, that's brave.
Shall I make it 1? What do you think? Do you think we should, if I remove him... Whoops, I shouldn't have done that, should I? Dang! Go back! Ah, what happened? Does undo bring that up? It doesn't, does it? Ah, what a shame. I didn't mean to do that. I meant to just change the avatar. Let's do...
Never mind.
Never mind. Can we make him...
These things happen.
They do, don't they? Is it easier for me to just start again?
It's easier probably to, if you right click with all those selected, right click on the garment and then reset to 3D arrangement points.
Oh, that might be an idea.
It's 4 or 5 above where you are. There we go.
Almost.
That should work. It might take you a moment to sort its life out.
So what I really wanted to do is swap out the gray figure to one of the projection templates, because they have these markings on that are a little bit shrouded in mystery. Let me see if I can fix the hands here.
Yes, the templates, especially the skirt templates, are very, very helpful because they have different weight maps on them to the normal Genesis figure. And what I think is a good idea is to actually check your garment against the template, because to have it work nicely, it gives you some guides as to where the different zones are, and as long as your garment fits outside the template, you will have a very easy job of doing the transfer process. If it's inside, I found it's a bit of a problem. And if you model it on the standard Genesis figure, you'll find that some bits will be poking through the template. Right. So bringing the template in to, check where you are. Once Joe's brought it in, we can have a look at the zones and such like on it.
Yes, and we can show you where to find those so that you can export them as well. These are them. So there's several, and I believe Marda made those, and they're really helpful. So they're slightly larger than the regular Genesis figure, but they also have things like, especially the dress ones, they have things like, there's no leg separation. So when you want to drape a skirt here, you don't risk that the cloth actually folds into the legs. That's just not happening here. And also the other thing that's important on here is that the weight maps are drawn on slightly differently. So I think for this, maybe we'll use this one here. That's the skirt tight.
As per the normal Genesis, each leg has its own weight map.
Right.
So when it projects in the transfer wizard, it projects that whole weight map around, and it confuses the skirt. It's why, when you do the initial projection, you'll find that when you bend one leg, between, where the skirt should be quite smooth, it will split and do crazy things. But if you use the projection template, which is excellent, and Mad has done an amazing job.
Mada, woo!
Yes, you won't get that. And I can't tell you how many years I've spent rigging skirts and being so frustrated, and then using the template and thinking, oh my goodness, this is just saved me so much time and mental anguish that it ought to be a product.
And the thing is,
to have to pay for it.
Things have considerably changed with Genesis 9, so they have made that much easier to get clothing in, and also convert it from like the Genesis 8 figure. If you have something that you've made for 8, then you can relatively easily rig it to Genesis 9. I'm just going to go quadrangulate this, and this is kind of, let's leave our garment like
just
this.
one last thing to talk about on the templates.
Yes.
Each of the coloured regions represents a body group which will have maps associated with it. So when I'm making clothing, if I'm verging on the edge of a group, I might just adjust it to bring it out, because even in between groups, so for example here where she's like mid, just above her knees, you've got that tan band. If my sort of dress or skirt was sort of just above the knee, then I am going to get maps projected from the bones below it in the purple zone.
Good point.
And that can cause you some issues.
Like we could avoid things on the hand here. If we are happy with the length of the sleeves, that's okay, but we're gonna get the weight maps of the hands projected to this part of the sleeve. So we could save ourselves a little bit of work and potential issues by just making the sleeves kind of stop here in the white bit, and then the weight maps of the hand just wouldn't interfere with the sleeve at all.
So you'll find that when you do have that issue where you're getting a bit of cross contamination, is that the right word?
That's a good word.
When you try and look at your garment and pose and find out where the problems are, you might find that there are some mystery problems. So, well, why is that doing that? And then you have to kind of go through all the bones and bend this and bend that. And you generally only bend the bones that, it's in the region of. And then you finally bend the bone below it. And you find, oh, my God, why is that doing that? Well, it's doing that because that bone has projected some weight maps into that area.
Yes.
And now, it's going to have an effect.
Indeed. So I might go and just leave the arms deliberately as they are here, so that we see that effect. Another thing that we're going to encounter probably is this area here that is baggy. And we're probably going to have some issues here, but we'll see what it looks like once we export the garment. Let me go and do that. Export.
Again, that's an issue where we've got, the arm is down, and the chest and the arm will both fight over anything in like that area.
Yeah.
So you might find that bits from the chest are projected there and bits from the arm are projected there.
Right.
And it just causes a whole mess.
I'll use meters on export, and I'll use OBJ. I'll just use all the patterns here. I'll use single object, weld, and thin. And UVs we're not worried about right now. We would have to at one point, but it's not about that. So I like it. I'm also gonna, this was just a little practice. Let me go and close ZBrush down. That's a good tool for fixing later. Let me go and bring my Genesis def load in here. And just to visualize the projection templates that we just looked at in Marvelous Designer, they can be brought up here on the Parameters tab with Genesis selected. And then under Utilities, we have this one here, Preview Follower Template. Is that it? Yes, that's the one. Those are the templates. And Crosswind quite rightly said, if you need other ones that are not in here, so these ship with the Genesis 9 figure, but if you need your own for something like, a baggy dress or a set of earrings or something like that, you can pay attention to where they all live and then add your own here. That's a very good point. So like if we were to go with the dress tight template, that's this one. If I select that and hit accept, then I get that figure in here. And it's an additional figure that is put in here, an additional rigged figure that is put in there in addition to the regular Genesis 9 figure. So if you wanted to export them, this is how to do it. So you select the Genesis 9 figure and then head over here to Preview Follower Template, pick the one or the ones you want. You can have others, so like a loose bodysuit can also go in here. And now you have multiple ones here. And then you just select this one and export that out as an OBJ, and you can have a look how each of these looks. And the point then also is, if I go and just remove these back, the moment we now go and bring in our shirt, I can pick a projection template that lets transfer utility run this. This is it, demo shirt v1. I'm expecting us to make a few others. This was also meters. There it is. So this is now the unrigged prop figure. And so the initial magic of making sure this follows together with the Genesis figure happens on the right click on the scene tab here. Under assets, we find the transfer utility. And that is this magic transfer wizard that takes care of so much. We set a source figure, which is the Genesis 9 figure. We set a target, which is our demo shirt in this case, the unrigged figure. And then here are the projection templates, and those are the ones that we could just visualize. So in our case, we're using the dress tight. And now it'll transfer the weight maps from that rather than this Genesis figure, like the base figure. That would be the other option, that we could have just said none here, or we could just say another one basically, but we're going to use the dress tight.
If you wonder why we're using the dress tight, is that this shirt hangs quite low and it verges on the legs. So if we were to use the bodysuit, for example, when you move the legs, you would get that splitting effect, even though they're not really that low.
Yes, it'll have an influence, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Let's go hit accept. And this now transfers the rigging of the Genesis figure into the shirt as much as the as much as there is to fit in, which is kind of nice. So yeah, we're going to see, I think, are we seeing something here already? No, not quite. I might give it a little color just so that we don't have the white here. Maybe not something.
What color are we going for today? Are we going to have a poll?
I'm thinking we should do. Yeah, we should. Maybe something that doesn't look like any of the colors in the weight map brush. So something like a dirty yellow, maybe. Just so that it's not great, but it's at least something that also the glossy roughness. I just like setting that up so that's not shiny. There. That's that. So John, what's the next step?
So the next step is to see how it works, see how effective it is, and if there are any areas that need attention. So
you tend to work from
lots of different ways.
You tend to work from. Go on. Sorry.
Yep. But generally speaking, you start at one end of a chain and work to the root. So, for example, you might start on the hand and then work your way up to the shoulder. So you select the hand, give it a move around, and let's see what happens.
So I like using,
with any luck, it won't break.
Yeah, I like using the power pose tools for that, because I can just click here and then either left click and drag or right click and drag this point, or use this pose tool here and just see what happens. Let me just go and zoom in to the hand here, and then this little trackball will show me things are moving. That's good. So sleeve's moving with it, and it's also not. I mean, this is a bit extreme here, but it is doing what it's supposed to. It doesn't throw up any issues. For the most part,
you might want to have a look underneath, because when you bend it quite low, I can see it crinkling underneath, and I don't know if that's going to
this here, right?
Cause some grief. It's not too bad.
This is a great example of what we're discussing. Rather than trying to fix this, and I suppose we would have to address it, it would be much easier if we just had the
didn't have it there in the
just didn't have it there in the first place. Stop the sleeves here, and we're good. So it's important to realize that once you've run this transfer utility, do have a look around and get a feel for the garment, then go back into the actual creation tool like Marvelous Designer in this case, or ZBrush or Blender, however you make the garments, and make design adjustments that'll help this process out in DAZ Studio. Don't be afraid to do this tons and tons of times. So testing at this stage is so vital, rather than you putting a lot of hard work in just to find out,
and then finding
actually,
out
that I find issues that I now need to, I've invested so much work that I now need to, undo. So,
So that one we might need to smooth out on the weight map.
Okay.
Just a little bit to, help it along.
Let's take a look. Yeah.
So the ideal is that you bend it in one axis until the issue occurs, and then use your weight map to sort it out. And with a bit of luck, the weight map's all you need.
Right.
But we'll show you a little bit later. Sometimes you need a little morph helper to help that out.
So on the forearm here, I can see that is kind of trying to work. It's also not terrible. It's just bending in on itself here.
So I think that's to be expected at that particular juncture.
Yeah. It's also, we get another issue here that we're probably going to address later, that these little gaps here. So we'll talk about that later. But let's say this is elbows good. Sleeves we're going to take care of by just making them a little bit higher, and then it's good to go. We go with the
just a point. It's always a toss up. Is how tight you are is having those sleeves that long, because it may be a really vital design point to what you're trying to make.
Yes,
in which
absolutely.
Case, you need to fix it.
Yes.
But if you're a lot tight to it, if it's not that important to your design or anything else, then I would really say go and adjust the garment and make your life easier.
Yeah. Like this here is now. We can see some bits and pieces happening here. That doesn't look great, so we'll see if that what that looks like in the other bends. You can always use Control-Shift-F to bring the figure completely back into the A position, no matter how many things you've changed. Just if you wanted to bring it back to the A position, that's here under Edit, Figure, Restore Figure Pose. Control-Alt-F is the normal shortcut key. I find that a little uncomfortable, so I've made it F3 for me. But it's that's the thing that works. Whoops. Sorry about that, Genesis figure. Yeah, so this is what happens due to the nature of the bagginess that we were discussing. That again, this is a design choice that if it is vital that you have baggy armpits like that, then you're gonna have to fix this. But if you don't mind them being a little less baggy, you can probably have you don't have to be just so aggressively fixing it, I suppose.
Yeah.
Shall we see how we can smooth this out here, maybe with the weight maps?
Sure. Yeah.
You suggested that rather than bringing it to the highest point, we can just go and do it in stages. I think that was a valuable tip, John.
Yeah.
So we know where the issue occurs. We'll make it a little bit like here, like halfway up this joint. I think also to show where this is. So this is the upper left arm bend, and on the parameters tab on rotation, this is essentially the equivalent to that slider that I've just changed here. And there's a hard limit set at 90. Make a mental note of that. We're going to go and do it kind of maybe 40-ish here. And so to figure out where these weight maps are, first of all, they're not on the Genesis 9 figure. I'm moving the joint on the figure and my shirt moves because it's a follower item. But where I actually need to look here is not the Genesis figure, it is on the shirt. So I need to find the same joint on the shirt. So that's sometimes a little difficult to figure out if you don't know the Genesis skeleton by heart. So it's on the left. That's the left shoulder here, isn't it? And to
point at it in the viewport and right click. I think it will give you an option.
demo shirt left upper arm. Sometimes it gets it right, sometimes it gets it wrong.
Yeah.
So it would now go with the upper arm, but I think mine is actually the shoulder. But it gets you, certainly gets you there a little bit faster. So that's a valid point. But in order to see the weight map, we need to go switch over to the weight brush tool. That's this one here. Node weight brush tool. Alt-Shift-W is the shortcut key. You can also find that in tools. Node weight brush tool. And then, very important, open the tool settings tab. That's also something that's not always open on every interface. So tool settings, you need to have that. It's a tab that happens under window, tabs, and then here tool settings. And then in there you find the general weights. And this is something that the transfer utility has created. So when we click that, we see that left upper arm doesn't actually show anything. Everything is gray. So let's go to the left shoulder, and that's where the weight map is. So John's tip was that this is potentially happening. Let's switch this over to the wire texture shaded, because we've got these elongated polygons here, and there is a fairly harsh transition between full weight map control, which is drawn in red, and slightly less of an influence zone here.
Mm.
And
the strength of the red basically denotes, how much the mesh is going to move. And because there's like a narrow transition between a very pale red and blue, the blue is not going to move. It's just going to go, and the red is going to stay where it is. And, we're now getting that pull. So what you could do with that then is to smooth out the weight map.
Let's do that.
And depending upon your garment, if you had a lot of folds under there, you might find that it's near impossible to see the geometry to fix it.
Oh, yes. We've had that in one of our rehearsal sessions where basically this bit was kind of down here, and you had literally a gap from the side of the body was here, then there was a gap, and then there was a part of the arm literally attached, and it was impossible to even select this. Yeah, good point.
Mm. So we were fairly lucky on this one. It doesn't look too drastic.
Yes. You can switch. These are the tools here that you have. These are the selection modes. These are faces. These are edges. These are vertices. So faces is good in this case. And this is the geometry selection tool. This is the paintbrush tool with which you can paint weights on. And this is the smoothing brush, which doesn't paint. It just makes this transition between different values a little bit less. So if we select that, this is a little bug in DAZ Studio. If you hover over this and there doesn't seem to be a brush tool appearing, that is something DAZ Studio does that sometimes. So you just go and select a different tool, like the universal manipulator, and then switch back to the weight brush tool, and then it still doesn't happen. Why is that?
The wonders of DAZ sometimes.
The wonders of DAZ. Why does my brush tool not appear, I wonder?
Perhaps you might need to actually select a different figure, change your tool, select Genesis, and then select back again.
Let's do that. Do we see anything in principle here? No. There it is. It's here. I can see it now. Perfect. Okay, we got it. We got it back. So if that happens to you, it's kind of good that this happened while we're doing it, because that is it does happen, and you think Jay's brush tool was showing, mine isn't. What's going on? So it's all good. It's all good. Was it the shoulder?
Do you notice how we're on a different map now? But that map is still contributing to that joint.
Where was I? And the spine. Yes, there we go.
I think you're on the chest or spine.
Spine. This is the spine. Yes, this is a good point. So this might also benefit from a little smoothing. It's a good point. I might make this a little larger here. Start with the shoulder, and just left click and drag over this to apply that, and we can see the ugly crinkles disappearing here.
And the aim here is not to get it perfect. If it goes perfect, that's brilliant.
That's great.
Save yourself a little job. It is to get it, as get it close, and then the next stage is to correct it the rest of the way with a JCM morph. Or are they still called JCMs? Or are they MCMs now?
They are, I think, CBCs. They're calling them now, and this is just because the industry calls them that. The corrective blend shapes versus joint control morphs. There's also another expression, I think, is PJCMs for partial joint control morphs, because they only do so much.
Do a little bit.
Do a little bit, yes.
Yeah.
So this is smooth now, but it's still not behaving perfectly, and we're going to address how to do that in a moment. Just like you said a second ago, if we go and have a look at the adjacent joints, like the spine here, it is worth just seeing if that contributes to the crinkleness, and maybe having a go.
I think it's the one down from this one. It's the next spine.
See, this is doing a little bit. If I smooth this, I can see this moving slightly better. Also, this kind of creak here. So it all contributes. Did you say the other way around? So that this was the shoulder, then we have the arms.
I think spine 3.
Oh, spine 3. Spine 3. Here we go.
It's up. There we go. See?
If you didn't know this, you really wouldn't know to look here.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go.
Just a note, just to say that for this particular stage, you need a very light touch. If you start going in heavy, it will tend to cause a problem. And as such, I only ever use the smoothing brush in this stage.
You don't use the paintbrush?
Use the paintbrush at all. The transfer utility does a pretty good job, and it's for us to tweak it and then fix it with a morph.
No, good point. Yeah. Let me see what happens if I go and move this joint on the figure, which was the shoulder, wasn't it? Was it upper arm? There we go, upper arm. If I go and move that more, see if it holds up. If I do this now, if more work needs to be done.
Yeah, a little.
A little, right?
Yeah. Well, maybe.
Maybe. I'll give it a go. I'll give it a go here. On the shoulder, here, there it is. I'll show you in a second what happens if I do go too much, because it goes and you can easily destroy it, and I can always undo it.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I did a lot of that when I first started.
It's tempting.
I was so frustrated with it, I thought, well, this isn't moving, so I wanted to move more, so I'm going to paint on it.
Yeah.
I'm going to add some weight, and then the weight is too much. And then, you end up in a cycle of smoothing it back down, and then something else goes wrong.
Like if we did do it, like paint, if you did want to try it, if just left clicking adds weight in here, so it makes it more red. Thankfully, Control Z undoes that, and then Alt left clicking paints it out. So if you wanted to have less influence and you think, no, screw the smoothing, you can make it as much as it turning gray, and then that means that
no change.
There's no change at all. There's no influence over this. But Control Z undoes this. Sometimes also with the smoothing brush, if you really crank it up, like sensitivity to 1, and you really go to town and mush all this up, then that is also not the desired effect that you want. And it's all got a little bit of influence, but that's also not a good start. So like sensitivity here is kind of 0.5 if you're painting with a mouse, or even lower, like 0.3, and then feel your way into this. I think 0.5 is kind of good here. Shall we, before we go on to Morph, shall we just do this again on the next joint, or on another part, or is this something? Are there any questions about this step for now? Because I understand it's tricky to get a grasp of what are you actually clicking, and what is it? What are you selecting in this thing? So I'm happy to go over this again.
Jeff has raised an important point.
Oh yeah, what has Jeff said?
What do you think?
I hate to be one of those who says save. Okay, Jeff, just because it's you, I'm going to go and save it. I've got a folder here on my desktop that I'm calling DAS plus stream, and there's like my MD projects are here. I'm going to go and make one just for the DAS scene. So I'm going to go and call this one DAS scenes. And Jeff, I appreciate it, really. I really like that you look out for us. And I'm going to call this one also, what do I call it?
Somebody's asked about the other side. Yes, you would have to do the other side too. Our mesh isn't symmetrical.
Yes.
So it would need a bit of care to do that.
Yes.
So yes, you need to do every joint essentially.
Yes, sadly, you need to do every joint. And you also need to figure out which joints need fixing or not. You do have to, like John was saying, that's why the Puppeteer tool is kind of cool. If you go and visualize every joint, the PowerPose tool is a good tool to remember. This is one joint, then you test this joint, and you test this joint. If you know this worked well on the right-hand side, then it's probably also going to work on the left-hand side, but you should still check it. But
not for sure, though.
if this didn't cause major alarms, then you're probably okay on this side as well. You still have to check it, but if you say this one's okay, I'm assuming this one's also okay, check it, see what happens. If this one's okay, this one's also okay. If this one caused you trouble, you're also going to have to go fix this. Then you have to fix this and that and that, and then you have to fix the spine until all the zones of influence are taken care of.
Indeed. The
Brush cannot fix everything. That's true.
If you have a lot of trouble with one arm, you can make a design decision to just cut the other arm off.
Yes.
You don't need it.
Do we want to? I think maybe at the end, let's show how we could have avoided this in the first place. Let's do that towards the end.
Yeah.
We should perhaps move on to how do we fix the rest of it, because this still doesn't look great. So this is as much as we could do with the weight maps. But how do we now?
We're into go Z time.
Let's go Z time. Let's do that.
Yeah.
So let me go and just quickly take the shirt off and just show you the Genesis figure. And once again, with this, we'll stick with this joint here. Sorry, wasn't this joint? Was this joint? So the reason why the Genesis figure behaves so beautifully, and we don't seem to see any of these issues, the geometry doesn't collapse. Had I rigged this OBJ from scratch and I'd put a joint in here, my figure bend, my joint bend would look terrible. And so did DAS's when they began working on it. But that's where some magic called the joint control morph, or the corrective blend shape, came in. And what that is essentially, and we went through this in the rigging stream a few months ago, if the shape changes due to the fact that you're bending a joint, you can employ something called a joint control morph, or this corrective blend shape. And that is a morph that reshapes the figure as a joint dial is dialed in. So in our case, we can see where that is. If we select the Genesis figure and head over here to currently used, you have to go and switch the hidden properties on. If they're not on, you don't seem to see anything here. But if we go and switch those on, you see that we have a grayed out hidden morph here, and that's called something that's barely readable, but it's dialed up to 100%. And if I go and left click and drag that 100% out, because this has been triggered by the fact that I've dialed up this joint, if I left click and drag over that, then you can see that this change is happening. So with this morph at 0, this is what the figure bend would look like if we just rely on the weight maps to get this job done. And that doesn't look great. So DAS have modeled this morph in, and now this looks great. So I'm telling you this because our demo shirt also has this morph in. If I switch to that, I also see this morph, and it has the same name, and it's also dialed up to 100%. And if I dial this out, then you see that this is happening. And this morph is created kind of on the fly by DAS Studio, because it recognizes, hey, this type of follower clothing doesn't have that morph, but the underlying figure, kind of the parent figure, wants to dial it up. I don't have it, so I'm just going to kind of make it up, and this is what it looks like. We have the option now to correct it. So if we go out and go take this shape into our modeling application and make a note of this name here by going to the little gear icon parameter settings, and we're just going to go and copy this out here. Body CBS upper arm Z90P underscore L. We just copy that out and make a morph that pushes this back in, and then overwrite this morph with our modeling thing. Then it'll look great. That's what we're going to be doing. 1500%. That's the plan. Just I don't know if we can. Let me just zoom in here. This is such a cryptic name. It does actually make perfect sense. It means body for the body, CBS for corrective blend shape, then upper arm, that's the joint we're fixing, then Z is the axis we're fixing, 90 is the value we're fixing, so the joint needs to be, the Z joint of the upper arm needs to be turned to 90%, P into the positive direction, L on the left arm. That is why that's why it's named that way. But yeah, that's why it's called that. So they're all, if you know what this means, you can kind of deduce what joint this is, how far it's bent. I think it's important to say at this point that we need to make sure this is triggered to 100% when we fix it. So when we go to my shoulder joint here, where is it? Was it the upper arm or was it, yeah, bent, there we go. If I were to change this to something like this, and I head over and check what that morph is dialed to, it's now dialed to 60.7. So this is not what I want to export, because that hasn't dialed up the whole morph. I suppose you want to make sure this needs to be triggered to 100% before you export it.
The angle is usually to the limit of the figure.
Right.
In my experience.
Yes. So tweaking this.
To be aware of if you've turned limits off.
Right.
Yeah.
David, no problem. You're welcome. You're welcome. So there's many ways to fix this. John and I prefer using ZBrush for this, because it has this one-click integration with DAZ Studio. I've got this little icon up here. That's the Go Z integration. You can also find it under File, Send to ZBrush, and it works both ways. You send the figure in this position to ZBrush. You do your fix in ZBrush. You send it back. It's extremely easy. But you can do it in Hexagon. You can do it in Blender, any other modeling application, to a certain extent, even in Marvelous Designer. Let me just go click that and show you the magic of that. And once ZBrush is started and you put the figure into a different position, it's really easy to send another position over and just fix that. So all this asset transfer only has to happen for the first time. Comma to get rid of this light box here, and then Shift left click and drag out of this to drag this thing out. Shift sometimes constrains it. Immediately press T to go into edit mode, F to frame the figure up. ZBrush does take a little getting used to, but it does grow on you, especially for this integration. It is
for this it's perfect.
Absolutely vital.
I mean, I think ZBrush is an alien application, but even for me, it's much easier to do this in here than it is almost anywhere else.
Alt left click the figure to select this subtool. So they're all different subtools. The figure is a subtool, but we want to alt click the garment to make sure we're drawing on that. All we need here is a bit of smoothing. That's Shift, hold down Shift, and that switches to the smoothing brush. This is a bit large. Square brackets to make that a bit smaller. You can use the regular smoothing brush. You can also switch to a different smoothing brush. Intensity 100% is too much. Let's drag that down to something like 30. If you're working with even more, if you're working with a tablet here, there we go. You have pressure sensitivity for this. That smooths this out all the way down to the bottom so that we don't see these elongated polygons anymore. And this here is a little transparency function. I find that very useful. It lets me kind of half peek like through the garment to see where the figure is. So I think the other thing I would do is just go and push this in and towards the figure, since this is a bit baggy. That, I suppose, here on the brush tool, I think the move brush is good for that. Move topological.
You prefer the move or the move topological?
Do you know, it depends. I like both. Topological, in this instance, I think it doesn't make a major difference. But I think one works with only using connected topology.
Yeah.
What do you prefer?
I don't use it enough to know. I was hoping to learn something.
So it's like the Blender has a similar brush, and it's one would, if you had two connected pieces here and you'd use it here, then it would use both, and that's the non-topological. That's just a regular move brush.
Okay.
Topological would only go and only have anything that's
selected.
Exactly.
Yeah.
On the smooth brush here, BS, I think cloth. This is the one, BSO. That is a different type of smooth brush. It says it'll only happen when you actually press shift. So thanks, ZBrush, I'm good. It also smooths the moment you press S. It just does it a little nicer, I find. I don't want to make it too smooth, but there.
Add some cloth-like kind of property to it.
ZBrush is so cool. You can even sculpt in wrinkles here at this point if you feel like, hey, I think I should have some wrinkles here. It's so easy. And the cool thing now is we can go and click Go Z and bring this back, and DAZ Studio pops up a dialog that says, hey, what do you want to do? Create a morph? Yes, we want to create a morph with the name of this crazy morph here. Thankfully, I've copied that earlier, so I'm going to replace ZBrush morph with that. No, actually, that's something else. That's something else. I didn't copy it. Let me go and do that. So under parameters here, you're going to make sure you copy this.
Too busy explaining
it. Then we go click on Go Z. Then the same thing happens. Now we can go and paste it in here. And since this morph exists, I want to override that. And because it exists, it'll replace the group path of wherever it is, so you don't have to change that. If you do make some from scratch, you can go and put it into the parameters hierarchy where you want it. So in our case, it would be hidden base correctives here, but we don't have to do that because it's it already exists. Then you hit accept, and that happens, and that's really cool. So that's fixed that problem, and it now, because we fixed it at 100%, we can now also go back to our thing here and see that it goes and behaves all the way through, which, also good to check that, but it seems to do that, so that's quite nice. You do that for every joint and you're done.
Yes. Don't do gloves.
Don't do gloves.
There's too many joints. More joints in there than there is in a shirt.
That is so true. That is so true. So it's a combination then, and why don't we just do this again on the other side, just a bit faster, just so that we get into the habit.
Do a speed fix.
Do a speed fix. Let's go and, or we can also try the bending here on all these joints. That's something else you have to try. That's the hip. Don't do that. That doesn't need fixing. But the one above it, well, that seems to be working. There is actually a product, Brian. There's 2 product links I've put on the Discord that make it easy to test your figures with poses that all trigger these types of things. And they're called, one's for Genesis 9, one's for Genesis 8. One's by Feral Fay, called the Content Creation Poses. And the other one is by Dark Edge Design, and that's called PJCM's, that's for Genesis 8. So like this is something where on this forward, I wonder if this can be done just with weight maps.
And that sort of thing is generally just a weight map issue. There's not a huge amount of geometry. The geometry just needs kind of relaxing a little bit, if you like.
Spine 3 on the shirt, back to the node weight brush under tool settings. Yes, there we go. This is a great example. Crinkly geometry with my smoothing brush.
Nice and gentle smoothing brush.
Nice and gentle. Those are the mysteries that I've been searching for years, you know.
Yeah.
It is so nice having somebody like you, John, who's been there, done that, and knows his trade, and can.
But it's years of experimentation.
It is, isn't it?
You know, it's a bit of a secret. You know, don't tell anybody outside this stream, anybody in the chat, okay? But I'm a tremendously lazy person. And if I can find an easier way of doing something, I will find it.
I appreciate your honesty.
My entire career is built on that.
And look at the size of your store. So there we go. It's obviously worked. So that's good.
Not just there, but the office as well.
Oh, okay.
So I became a coder. I decided this job's too, you know, this filing thing's too hard. This opening lots of things is too hard. Must be an easier way of doing it. Then I learned coding, and then I found out, yes, there is.
Do you do scripting in DAZ Studio as well?
I've done a bit. I'm not very good at it, mostly because the object model is a little bit obscure to me. But I do a lot of coding for my day job.
Mm-hmm.
Coding and data wrangling.
Whoops.
That's a bit of a pinch there. Right?
It is, isn't it? Shall we take care of that?
I think so.
So just again to reiterate, I'm using all these stars on the figure so that both the figure and the clothing bends. And now I'm going and finding spine 1 here in the shirt. And then I'll switch over to the weight brush tool and select the weight. So if that's not selected, sometimes you don't see anything. And then you go gently does it with the smooth brush. And that's quite nice. Fixed another one. Also, like Jeff would say, Control S just to save it, you know.
Don't forget to save.
Don't forget to save.
Is there an autosave script for DAZ?
Do you know, there is something called Power Save, I believe. That is something, I don't know if it does autosave, but it does iterative saves. It's by V3 Digitimes, so that might come in handy.
I think, you know, if we clubbed together and bought you that, we might save Jeff a little bit of stress.
Jeff likes it though. Super safe, that's the one. That's the one. Whoops. See, this happens when I do it on the clothing and not on the figure. This is really not what I wanted to do. I want to go and make sure I do this on the figure here. That was spine 1, that was pelvis, wasn't it? Pelvis has an entrance. Yeah, there we go. There's also a tiny pinch here that we could fix while we're in a fixing mood.
Yeah. Fix away. These are easy fixes.
Yes.
If you see an easy fix, fix it.
Yeah, good point.
Because then you won't have to remember you've got to go and fix that easy fix.
Yes.
So many joints, you know.
Yes. And some garments are so complicated because we're doing this super easy shirt here, but imagine you had a shirt, like an undershirt and an overshirt, and you had another, you know, cape with extra bones and stuff.
Yeah.
There is one other way that we can fix, smooth things out if you didn't want to use the smooth brush. Like maybe this area is nice to just show that, just in case we wanted to do that. If we had a larger area, something that's difficult to access, this is the geometry editor, or like the geometry selection tool, isn't it? This here.
Mm-hmm.
So we go and paint a bit on here, like say this area needs attention. You can make it larger. Control plus on the numpad makes it larger. And say we wanted to smooth this whole area out. You can go with this selection, right click, weight editing, smooth selected. So that smooths this whole area. There's some nice selection tools here. And iterations, as well as how strong you want that to be. Start with something like 10 iterations and a value of 50%, and you'd see what happens there. You can go do it again. Smooth selected. And it kind of relaxes this part a little bit. So that's another way to do it if you don't want to deal with just with the brush.
Yeah. It's kind of handy when you've got an area of geometry that maybe you can't see. Maybe it's a fold underneath something, and the fold is causing you not to be able to see it with the weight brush. With a bit of creative selection, that can save you a bit of time.
Like these two bits, I've smoothed the bit in the middle, and that looks really good, but I think this and that still has a bit of a kink to it. Let's see if we can work that out with a bit of this. Yep. And then shift select, whoops, sorry, was it alt select with that? No, control select, there we go. So it's not shift. So if you select something, it just goes and gets rid of the previous selection. So left click and drag to select this, then control and then select that to add to the selection. Control plus to make that a bit bigger, even maybe add more to it at the top here, something like that. And that's our selection, weight editing, smooth selected. And I might use 20 iterations there. Geometry selection, clear selection gets rid of the selection. And that's the pelvis. The hip doesn't need doing. And that's basically the weight maps done for the bottom here. So while we're in this mood, let's go and fix this part again on the other side before we have a look at a full body morph that will also cause issues, but on a different scale, so to say. So once again, I'll just use this, drag it up. We can try halfway first, just fix the weight map. And this is, in case we've forgotten, the right upper arm on the demo shirt. Right upper arm. Oh, that's the figure, isn't it? On the demo shirt. This is the demo shirt, isn't it? Oh, there we go. Spine, sorry. Right upper arm. Oh, so on the arms, that's actually interesting. On the right forearm, doesn't have any weight maps. It has a map, but it's set to 0.
Yes,
so
it's
that's different from Genesis 8, isn't it?
Yeah. Genesis 8 did have some kind of little bones underneath it, but it only had the one. And they've separated them basically so you can have different weight maps for a twist rotate and a rotate up and down.
Right. Yeah, so these are two weight maps that'll...
so the weight map for one won't work for the weight map for the other. So they had to split to have a couple of bones to do that.
Right. Oh, that's how they did it. Beula, sorry. Good point about the UVs. Yes, we kind of skipped over that part. If you don't make any changes, significant changes to your garment, then I would recommend you do the UVs first. Perhaps not the texturing, but have the UVs done first. So like if we're testing this now and we find we need to make design choices, I'll probably do this, make the design choices, test it again in DAZ Studio. If I'm absolutely happy, I can fix all these things that we see here. Then you do your UVs, and then you do your texturing, and then that'll work together with this. But it's a very good point. If you were to say, hey, I need to make some changes to the garment as a result of what I'm finding here, and that'll screw up your UVs. That's a problem. So yes, good point. Indeed, and it is only this correct crosswind. It's only about what happens to fixing all these things. How do you make it look good inside DAZ Studio? That's exactly right, crosswind. So with this, we use the smoothing brush again, gently and quickly.
While you're doing that, Jay, I've just got to go and have a very, very short break.
Okay.
I shall be back shortly, chaps.
I'll see if I remember all the steps. It's just audience and me now. See if we can remember it. What I like to see with the weight maps, and I've been ambivalent and afraid of weight maps, like many users probably. What I like seeing is with the wire texture overlay here, what it actually does to the geometry, like evening out some of those long stretched polygons, that it does actually do a nice job. I do like that. And fixing morphs, yes. We're going to talk about the full body morphs next, and all these morphs when you dial in a custom character and you see similar issues appear. They're kind of a slightly different issue, but nevertheless related. The shape morphs. Let me see. Put this back to the full whack. There we go. I'm not sure if we can actually save more with our weight maps here. Or if we should just go straight to, yeah, we can. Good stuff. Or go straight to fixing this morph. If you do this in Blender, if you don't have ZBrush, look into the OBJ companion by Man Friday. That is a good product that makes this not quite a one-click affair, but it makes it easier than to export file, export avatar, import into Blender, import that. It makes it a little bit easier to get this as close to a one-click as you can. So with ZBrush, it's really nice. You select the Genesis figure or the shirt. In this case, it doesn't matter because both of them will have the morph with the same name. So under parameters, you see this morph here, and we go in and we make sure it's dialed up to 100%. We go and copy this name out. So body CBS upper arm Z90NR. Just copy that, cancel out of that, select the Genesis figure, send it to ZBrush. And that'll do this. Alt-click to select the garment. And we zoom in a little bit. And I'll start maybe by smoothing. Hey, he's back. All right. And this is going to...
You've been drinking too much water today. It's too good for me. My body is rejecting it.
Good.
So where's the coffee?
Whoops. I think it's a bit large, isn't it? Intensity is good, but... Just doing a little bit of cloth smooth here and there. Oh no, what have I done? Something's gone wrong. No. That is bad. This happens sometimes. It also, ZBrush also has issues. It might be. That is weird. Should we stop worrying?
I've never seen it put a second tool down.
No, it could just be that it's a glitch. I mean, ZBrush is also glitcherama.
Yeah, sometimes, especially with GoZ, quite often you just have to completely close it.
Do you know?
I think you're. I don't know.
We'll see what happens when I bring this back.
Yeah.
There is one other trick that you can use if you do this a lot, like if you on your 20th morph. There is a way. Or was it in preferences? Preferences. And then preferences GoZ, there's clear cache files. That sometimes works if something arrives that isn't what you've sent or something, then you can clear the cache files. It's like a destination on your computer that GoZ and DAZ Studio use to interchange data. So if something goes wrong, just clear that. That makes sense. But I'm with you, John. just close ZBrush and try it again.
I'm not confident about it, but yeah, clearing the cache and closing ZBrush is the
it's the way to go.
Ultimate.
It seems to have worked. I don't know.
It surprised me.
But I will do what you said. I'm just going to go close this down in case we need it again. We'll just go open it again.
Yeah.
Just asking, can it be set up and saved in MD as a morph? Actually, we're probably going to cover that now. So imagine you've gone through every joint now and all these things behave well, then we might come across a second issue that happens when you go, I'm just going to go switch this back to filament for a second. When you go into your Genesis figure and dial up one of the shaping morphs, let me go into actor and perhaps people feminine. Let's do that. Let's go and have a feminine morph, Angela 9. You see that this happens, and that's not nice. So breasts distort here. It looks like the garment is kind of following, but it's not following very nicely. This could do with fixing, and it looks like out of the box, most characters do that. Not all of them, but even our base feminine character does this.
And this is not something you can fix with the weight map,
right?
Good. No amount of painting on weight maps is going to change that.
Good to know. Good to know. So what do we do, John?
I personally would start with the base feminine, and then work my way up. As I said earlier, depending upon whether you intend to sell this or not,
right,
depend upon how many of these morphs you'll have to include. If you're just selling it for yourself, in your own store, then I think the minimum is the base morphs, like the pair figure and all that sort of thing.
Yes, there's the custom characters, but there's also these things that we have to just shape the body, like I'm trying to find some good ones here, like for the men, there's stocky, and there's the bodybuilder morphs and stuff like that. Yeah.
But if you're doing it for, if Daz have commissioned you, then you have to include many, 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 many more.
Like all of
That's
these.
my understanding, unless somebody tells me otherwise.
It's true. I mean, if you look at things that are Daz originals, you see all the shapes that they support, and this is what they've put in. This is why this takes such enormous amount of work to do that. They basically all need correcting, because under the breasts I see things. I see also clinging here, so they could all do with improving.
Yeah. With something like that one, I think, if it's just a little issue under the breast, ZBrush will be quicker.
Yes.
If it's a more, thorough job, then maybe MD is the way to go.
In fact, let's show you both options. Let's use one of these, maybe voluptuous here. Should we voluptuous, or shall we do base female, like John suggested? Maybe base female.
I'd always do the base female first.
So let's do that.
Mostly because I think the base female is probably used as the basis for most of them.
Possible. Here it is, base female. Let's do that. So it is a bit like the joints, that this is a morph that's dialed up inside Genesis. And because we have follower clothing, our clothing item recognizes, hey, or Daz Studio recognizes, hey, clothing item doesn't have that. I'm going to put it in. I'm going to create it on the fly, but I don't know exactly how to do it. So I'm just going to go and do this. And we can also find it on the parameters tab under currently used. There's base feminine. This is the one. And technically it's this one here, the base feminine body, because I've used the slider that does the body and the head. This is a controller for these two sliders, so these are the separate ones. So
there's no actual morph on that.
This isn't the morph. Indeed, this is just dials up these two. So we probably need this one here, and that has a more healthy name. It's also not hidden, but if we look in our shirt, we'll find that's where it is. So this is the body and the head. We need the body one. Go and make a note of that. So this has a slightly different name, but the way we handle it is the same. We go and select the Genesis figure. If you just select this and send it over to ZBrush, only the shirt is going to arrive. That might be enough, but it's always good to have a reference figure in there. So anything that's parented to the figure will end up in ZBrush. And also in Hexagon, if you use the Hexagon integration. This can be done in Hexagon, by the way. Hexagon has smoothing brush tools very much ahead of its time, I have to say. And I never knew it back when I was using Hexagon.
I used to love Hexagon.
It's good.
It's just a shame it's a little bit buggy.
Yeah, like especially these those brush tools, they leave a cursor behind, and there's a setting there's a link on my website, a fairly recent post, Brian. If you can dig it out, it shows you how to undo that, and then you can basically use it much like this, a little bit less high tech, but still very much usable for quick fixes, for the fact that it's a free tool and so well integrated into DAZ Studio. What would you do here, John? Just smoothing?
Just a little smooth, I think. I mean, this one isn't suffering from what a lot of shirts, do, especially the tight ones, which is basically shrink wrap it onto a boob, so you get.
It's this under boob clinging. That's terrible. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's usually between the boobs or the cleavage. You, instead of having a nice t-shirt which is loose and sort of sitting across them, it kind of sucks to the body and looks a bit crazy.
Yeah. So I mean, as a quick fix, this was easy, wasn't it? I've used symmetry here. X toggles symmetry. So on these things, even though our garment isn't symmetric, sculpting tools usually allow you to apply the same thing on multiple sides. So X does that in ZBrush, and that was a good thing to use here. And once again, we just go replace this morph. It automatically detects the shirt, by the way. Even though I'm on Genesis 9, it knows this is a morph for the shirt, because that's what was selected in ZBrush. And boom, this isn't bad. Knowing what to do is literally half the rent. The rest is just do it more often and keep at it, really, isn't it?
So did you want to show just a quick redrape in MD?
Let's do it.
Say one of the more extreme figures.
Let's do it.
I tend to find the figures that aren't too far away from the base usually only need a little tweak, but the ones where the body shape gets much larger, it tends to be a bit more, and then MD can be your friend, but you have to be a little bit cautious with it.
Shall we try? I'd like to try something more extreme. Voluptuous is okay, but I'd like to have something even more.
What about one of the bodybuilder ones that we were having a look at earlier in the masculine? Body stocky or something? Yes, it doesn't really look like it needs much, does it?
Which is good. I mean, on Genesis 9, this is one of those things. These are almost all there. They require very little fixes, which is good for us, because I remember on Genesis 8 and all the many custom characters, everything seems to need a fix. Like all of these, like here, body older is an interesting one. Well, let's do mass. How about mass? And mass also, it all works these days. Kind of nice. Let's try a custom character here. Maybe Freya.
Yeah.
Or Angela. Angela that's a great way to do this. So I went into full body instead of people, and that means there's a separate body slider now that doesn't do the head. So I'll use this. And once again, in our demo shirt, we have that dialed up here. Angela body BS body. So I'm going to go and copy the name out. And there's we currently don't have an elegant way to send things over and back to Marvelous Designer, although, and I must say, Tug is working on something that's called the Marvelous Designer Bridge. That is a Go Tug, absolutely. It's a very exciting project. I've watched the demo video. Brian, if you can find that link, drop it in the chat, because everyone who's working with Marvelous Designer and DAZ Studio, do have a look at it, because it's great. It's I'd love to fully explore it. I've tried it about a year ago, and it was more in beta at that point, but it's come a long way since then, and it does support Marvelous Designer 12, does it not? Tug, please let us know. Themor, Changeling Chick, we're going to do Themor later. It's a good idea. Welcome, by the way. Good to see you. So
CC turned up.
CC is here. Woohoo! Go Texas! All right.
Keep an eye on her. You know what she's like.
For this, we need to export both these things separately. So we need to go and export the body shape. That's going to be our avatar. And we're going to need our crinkly shirt as well. So I'll go and do that with DAZ Plus Stream. So we're going to call this one G9 Angela.
An interesting thing to do here, Jay, is actually to name it the morph name.
I need two things though, don't I? Because I need the morph name for the character and the shirt.
Oh, sorry. Are you doing the shirt?
I'm doing the character, I thought, first.
Okay. Yeah.
But yes, that is a very good idea. This one here, filter objects selected roots. That means nothing that's parented will be exported. It's a very good point, John. I might do that with
the fun thing is when you import it as a morph and you select that file named the morph name, it puts the morph in for you. Puts the morph name in for you.
That is a really good tip. Let's do that for the shirt. So this is now that's going to be my shirt. It's just going to be called what I've just copied the name of there. And once again, with filter objects here, that's what we want. Technically, if you don't already have it, you also need the Genesis figure in the unmorphed state. So you technically also need to go and export this in Marvelous Designer so that you can bring in the morph target. I already have it, so I'm pretty confident it's going to work. Let me go.
I mean, if you're doing this, the likelihood is that you made it on that in the first place.
Yes. Good point. I'm going to go and delete everything here, don't I? And just use this as my Genesis avatar. And I'll go and import my OBJ shirt, which is now this weird name here. And it'll be no, hang on a minute. Did I do that right? I need to go import add OBJ to garment. That's what I meant. Sorry. That's what I meant. So this.
Well, in reality, Jay.
Yeah.
You don't need to import the garment again.
I don't? Are you sure?
No, because the garment hasn't changed.
Because the garment was already there. We had it as a patterned garment, didn't we?
Is the blend shape. Genesis.
Do you think it'll go back as far as that? Let's check it out.
It's got quite a long...
Shirt! All right, perfect. So this is nice. So all we need to really do is, don't even need to select that. We just go and import the Angela body now as a morph target. 60 frames, 30 frames, doesn't matter. And it's now going to go ahead and simulate that and grow our garment into this. Very well spotted, John. Good to know, since we have the OBJ garment already. I've had instances in which I suppose that was just my oversight, really. After so many morph things, this patterned garment didn't want to work anymore. I literally had to bring it in as an OBJ and use that as a morph. We can show both options here. This is actually perfect. This is what we want. Now it looks nice. So if we
But
go...
the nice thing about that is that, once you've exported a whole bunch of body shapes, you only have to do it once.
Right.
Yeah.
I'll overwrite my OBJ that I've just exported, not with the...
I did experiment with trying to put a keyframed transition in.
Oh, yeah.
So for it to go to Genesis female to this one and that one, to try and have it in a whole sequence.
How did that work out?
Unfortunately, Marvelous Designer wouldn't let me.
Oh, because so one of the things you've told me before, and I thought that was an important point too, was that when you say you have Angela and you have Freya and you have the base figure, you probably want to not go from base to Angela and then from Angela to Freya. You want to probably reset it back to base and then move it to Freya, right?
Yes, I would imagine so. Yes.
So you could. I see what you're saying about the animations of your base Angela, base Freya, base Themor, that sort of thing.
And somebody better than I might be able to set up an animation in their studio to do it, and then you can export the FBX to Marvelous Designer, and then you don't have to worry about the morph importing the morphs.
Right.
Because you just play it from frame 1 to say frame 30, and that would transform it from one figure to another, and so on and so forth.
Do you know, just reading your chat talk about the MD bridge, do you have a link to it that you can post? Or Brian, if you can find it, can you post it in? That'd be great. It's a forum post right now on the DAS forum. If you look for Marvelous Designer Bridge, I'm sure you're going to find it. Because this is a project everyone should know about. I think it's nice. It's good that exists. And thank you for your hard work, Tag. It's really nice. Let's import our morph into this now. So what John was saying is we've already named it this morph, so we can either head over to Edit Object Morph Loader Pro, or you can use that little icon here. I've got it here. That does the same thing. Power Loader. Sorry, Morph Loader Pro. That's the one. So on the shirt here, I'll go and pick what I've just exported, which is this one here, Angela Body. And on here, down here, I want to say reverse deformations. That needs to be set to yes. If you can't find it, right click on this and then set it to something else. So I think no is the default, set it to yes. You also want to overwrite the existing morph. You want to set this to deltas only. And the name is already implied by the file name. So this is nice. You don't have to now rename it or remember what's it called. You can just do this. And technically, you got to be on the shirt when you do that as well. And with a bit of luck, it should have worked, yet it didn't. Dang, John, why didn't it work?
Is that an older file where is this the shirt that we made earlier, or is this the shirt from...
I thought it was the shirt that we literally made today. It might not. It might not be. If it isn't, it's kind of, under normal circumstances, imagine you see a message that says this was a success and everything is great. But since we wanted to show you this other way anyway, let me go and delete the shirt and export this again, because I've overwritten it now. I'm going to go export this again and import it as the OBJ to garment in Marvelous Designer, because it works just as well. It's the same file name, so I'm going to go just overwrite that.
I was just wondering whether we'd exported it wrong. It's with thickness and
possible.
Unwelded.
Did we also, what I don't remember, we only have base res, there's no smoothing on this. Okay, just wanted to double check that. So, plan B then, import add OBJ to garment, and we use this again. And we say add garment, we don't need to do this. And it comes in as the crinkly shirt here. And that is okay, because we're still Angela. So all we need to do here is simulate it. Let all this even out. And this evilness doesn't quite go away.
No, it's...
It would be much easier if we could still use the patterns, huh?
Yeah. That's part of the problem. When you get these things and the geometry is a certain way, it almost wants to keep that shape.
I have
it's why it's a little bit of an issue.
I have Plan C though. Let's do Plan C. How's that?
Plan C.
Plan C. Let's go get rid of this. Let's go get rid of that.
Come back to ZBrush.
That'll be Plan D. Let's go and use the base Genesis 9 shape. Let's go and dial out Angela here and export our shirt as that.
Uh-huh.
Is
That's
it still
a good Plan B?
It's good, isn't it? Is it called? Yeah. Is it? I'm just going to call it
it's the Angela one.
Demo shirt. I'm going to call it base. It's called demo shirt base. So now this should work, right? If we go OBJ to garment, demo shirt base, add as garment, yes, perfect. So now we go and do I still have the Angela body? Yes, I do. So I can just go and say import OBJ Angela G9 Angela. So that's going to be our morph target now. So I'll say add morph target. And hopefully that should distort the shirt in a much nicer way.
Should be rather similar to our first attempt there.
Unmorphed changing chick, exactly right. Yes, unmorphed shirt, and then let it sim that. And it's nearly done. This is great minds think alike. Look, we're done. This is good. This is good. Now we export the shirt, and that'll be our morph. I like it. So I'm going to override this now because that has that name that I need. Override, yes.
Just a cool thing, and I know I'm being really picky.
Oh, please be.
But your offset's 3 millimeters.
Did we say 1 is good or 0?
Oh, we did 0, didn't we?
We did 0. This is the gap between the avatar and the clothing. I love doing this with you, John. I have to say, I really love doing this with you. You know so many things. I love input from Changeling Chick and from everyone else who's chipping in, because this is such a tricky thing to work out. It requires multiple brains.
It takes a lot of concentration to do clothes, because little things like that could ruin your day, and especially if you don't notice it until you finish the product, then you're going through everything and having a look, and then suddenly one morph kind of brings everything away from the figure.
I wonder if this was what our problem was. Perhaps we did it unwelded and thick, like you suggested.
I think so.
It could well be. It could well be. So weld and thin. So let's go dial up Angela again. That looks terrible. Good. On our shirt.
I found it, for reasons I don't quite understand, I found it works more often if you actually have the morph dialed up.
Interesting. Magicness! This is the message we were looking forward to. Created morph successfully. And now Angela can wear the shirt. I like it. I like it. And things in between as well, right? If we dial her out a little bit. So this is already ERC frozen. We don't have to worry about that.
Yeah. There's a little caveat when you're doing that.
Oh, yeah.
And that's that, your vertices have all got weights on them. And those weights are associated with a particular part of the body. If they fall too far away from the joint they're intended for, you may find odd things going on.
Right.
Does that make sense?
No. Explain it again.
Right. Okay. So if you, around the wrist, those vertices have got a weight map on it for the wrist joint.
Right. Yep.
If you, if the morph that you're dealing with has particularly thick wrists, and those vertices slide up beyond the wrist joint, when you bend the wrist, that weight map is going to activate.
So like wrist is here, that's where it should bend, but if there is a discrepancy, you might find a bend here or there, or like some issue that doesn't look good.
Yes. So it's just to be aware that, you want it to stay more or less where it is.
Right.
You don't want it to go too far.
Right.
And again, it's one of the many things that makes, making clothes, lengthy. Because for a lot of the figures, they're of a similar shape,
Right.
more or less. But then, you need to include a few Titan ones, like some of the big muscle men ones.
Right.
And they're, the mesh is going to cling to them and shrink and slip over the figure's skin.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where you're going to get some problems. There is a little trick for that.
Oh, yeah.
And that's in Marvelous Designer, if you go and have a quick look. And that's the shrinkage weft and shrinkage warp.
Oh, okay. Can we do it on an OBJ to garment, do you think? Let's try it out.
Has it got a shrinkage weft and warp?
It does.
Yeah, it's there.
All right.
Yeah. So if you have a particularly small character, you can reduce the shrinkage weft and warp, and it will come closer to the character. If you've got a very big character, you can increase it, and the mesh will, grow with the figure.
Let's try it out.
Yeah.
Let's show what it is. Do you want to?
If you make them like 80-80.
Do you want to explain the difference between what is warp and what is weft?
Okay, so warp and weft are the threads in your garment. And one of them goes up and one of them goes across, and I never remember which one's which.
Neither do I. I was hoping you would do that. So the threads are done like this. Then this is usually how things are woven, like this way and that way. And one is the warp, and one is the weft. But we don't know which one's which.
I didn't know, not off the top of my head. I just when I remember, I then don't use Marvelous Designer for a month or two, and then I forget again. But generally speaking, I adjust them to the same proportion. I wouldn't adjust one without the other, under maybe really exceptional circumstances.
Do you know, I did it once.
At 100, it's kind of 100% of its original size. At 110, it's 110%, etc., etc., etc.
I think I've just found out what it is. I think warp is the one that elongates this.
Yeah.
So warp's got to be that, and then weft is that. That
weft
makes
is left
sense.
to right.
I followed a tutorial of yours in which you made some scrubs, and I think I was at this part where I made the outer
mime tutorial.
That's the one, the silent one, and I made the one the kind of the doctor's jacket, like the overcoat, and I was thinking I wish it was a little bit longer, and I just adjusted the warp, and that basically does what this is trying to do. It just makes it a little stretchier here.
Yeah. I mean, if you're going to adjust one of them, I would advise to do it at a small amount.
Right. So 100 and 150 doesn't look so good.
If you stretch it too far, then where the sleeves join the arms, you might find that that no longer actually works. There we go.
Yeah,
that's have a giant shirt.
We wanted to quickly tell you what you need to do in order to save out your garment, this or other garments, just so that you know how to actually distribute things. If you wanted to make something that you wanted to share with people, how to do that. That is one thing that's on our agenda, and I think we can squeeze that into the last 15 minutes. Was there anything else that we wanted to talk about? Because I don't recall. There's been so much good information that we've touched on.
Yeah, no, I think packaging is it now. We've done a morph, haven't we?
We've done a full body morph.
We've fixed some joints.
We've destroyed a garment.
We've talked about, some pitfalls and so on and so forth.
Yep.
Yeah, it's all good, I think.
It's all good, isn't it? Brad had a question, and he said, once you do these things, once you fix, say, full body morphs and joint controls, do you go through every single joint again and hope it works, or is there now additional work to be done?
No, I mean, it's understood, I think, that the joints and so on and so forth should work with the base figure,
right?
With a morph on top of it, you may find that there is an issue.
Like this is a great
However,
example here. We could technically go and say, hey, if Angela is dialed in and we have this pose, then we need yet another control morph here. We could make that happen, I suppose.
We could, but generally speaking, I think that, and this is something we could do in Marvelous Designer, actually. If we can reset the, if we can reset.
I'll see what we can do.
The original.
I mean, this would be great with just with the smoothing modifier, I suppose, on the garment.
We're going to put the smoothing modifier on, weren't we?
Yeah, we didn't actually do that. That's the other thing we could do. Let's just do that before.
Just a point on fixing that sort of thing. What we generally do and what's accepted is that what we do is create a few adjustment morphs.
Right.
So in problem areas, we will create a little morph that just moves it ever so slightly.
Right.
Yeah. So you might have somewhere on the legs where it just lifts the front. Yeah. And then the customer can activate that, and it will usually pop out any poke through.
So those
you could do an expand all.
You mean those are morphs that are not automatically triggered? Those are things that if I were to go into like a quality garment, like an Escher garment or a Fugazi garment, or one of those types of garments, if you go in and you find on the parameters tab, you find adjustments, and you find something like crotch adjust, shoulders adjust, that sort of thing.
Exactly. And once we've done the joints and we've done the morphs, then we have a look around and say, okay, well, we need a shoulder expand morph. And then that works with anything. You just need to go and dial it up. Or perhaps we need an expand all morph. And then what we do is actually just go into Marvelous Designer and increase the offset by 1 or 2 millimeters. And that puffs it out, and that's the morph.
And that's your morph. So that's awesome. So if that was a good garment now, that wasn't destroyed, you select the avatar, and then on surface here, skin offset, that's it. So the default was 3, which is a little much, but I suppose you can even make it 5. That is an expand all, and if customers want to dial it up to 10%, then if that's enough to fix, then we're good.
But you can have it so that it just goes 1 millimeter.
Okay.
But then if the customer dials 1, it will go 1 millimeter. If they dial 2, it will go 2.
Clever.
So it's really kind of, flexible in that way. I
like the warp and weft here. That's nice. I think Nate would agree with me. 1,500%.
Portrait of CC in a husband's shirt. Apparently.
Very true. Yeah, this would work. Okay, the smoothing modifier. It's something that the transfer utility offers to put in automatically. We think it should be used on a case-by-case basis, and it can get rid of these things. You can use it in 2 ways. One is you can create one totally manually, and that is with your shirt selected. You can head over to Edit, Object, Geometry, and there is Add Smoothing Modifier. And when I do that, watch what happens to the poke through on the figure. It goes away. But also notice that the garment kind of changes in other areas, and we may not always want that. So while it has fixed this poke through here, if we head over to mesh smoothing here, there's the on-off switch here. That's what it does, but it does the smoothing everywhere. And technically it's a very good collision detection underneath the hood in Dash Studio. So here you set the collision item. Since it's follower clothing, it kind of recognizes, so you probably want to have it collided with Genesis 9. But if you had something like an undershirt and then a jacket on top of that, you might want the jacket to collide with the undershirt rather than the figure, so that creates that additional offset there. You can also add values to this. So like here under smoothing iterations, 2 is the default, but you could make that 10. And then it takes a little while for everything to calculate, but it goes and would correct more severe poke through, but it would also get rid of a lot of nice features of the garment. Like this is now completely smoothed out here, and not how our garment came out of DAZ Studio. So there is that. There's also this here, the smoothing type. I think if we set this to, let's say, to 5, and you change this from base shape matching to generic, you get a slightly different smoothing effect. So something to play with.
It's important to know, if you're doing clothes for production, that you must fix the joints with weight maps and MCMs, or morphs, before you turn the smoothing modifier on.
Yes,
the garment must work without smoothing.
Yes, and it's a big thing if you correct clothing, even if it's just for scenes rather than for production clothing. If you make changes and you see, well, this is what I need to fix in ZBrush, you send the garment over and you think, that looks completely different. What's happened here? Likely scenario is the smoothing was made a correction that wasn't quite there. You then try to send it over to ZBrush, but that's, of course, you don't have smoothing there. So it's always nice to switch this off and then make your correction and see what actually needs correcting, and then either disable this or go really easy on this. There is a way, we discussed this yesterday during our rehearsal, there is a way, if you feel the whole garment could do with the smoothing pass. I'll go and put the figure back into the original position here. If you feel the whole garment lends itself to a slightly smoothed look, like I don't know if ours does, if we do see a big difference here, I don't think we do, but we had one yesterday that had more extreme overlappy type crinkles on the arm, and when those bends happen on the polygons and these really sharp edges happen, they often look like black holes and it looks ugly, and at that point smoothing might be a good idea. So what you can do is, if you feel like it looks good with smoothing on, you can go and literally export your garment with the smoothing on and import that as a morph, or just update the geometry and then it's smooth by default. That'll get rid of these issues. We're not going to show it because we're running a little late already.
I was going to say, we've got 9 minutes now to
do the wrapping up thing.
To do the package.
Can you use these steps on a product you've purchased? Yes. Often products that don't have smoothing either on there or where it's not enabled, you can just go and create a smoothing modifier on this and add add one yourself, like I've shown, and see what it looks like. Often some clothing have it and then it's disabled, or it's only enabled just a little bit. You can then increase it if you want. So yeah, you can do that.
And yeah, if you have ZBrush, you can send it to ZBrush.
Yes, indeed.
And adjust it if you want to. It's entirely up to you. Or hexagon, or whatever morphing package you're using.
Do you know, I think I might actually, for this smoothing here, I might make a video on my channel on how to use hexagon for ironing these things out, like crinkles that we've discussed, things that we usually do in ZBrush. It is possible in hexagon, and it's free, and it's not super elegant, but it's certainly worth it. So saving this for sharing then, if you look at the content library rather than the smart content, and then have a look at Genesis 9, your DAZ Studio library, you find that there is a figures category. So remember this is your library here. Somewhere there's figures. If you open up figures, people it is. There's people, and then you have your figure generation. So there's Genesis 9, and then eventually you have clothing, and then you have something like the vendor name, and then underneath that you have the outfit name, and then you have the actual objects that go with your outfit. And underneath there, you might have something like, materials or poses or something, anything that belongs with your item. So in our case, it's just a shirt, but it means we have to go and create this hierarchy in an empty folder so that when customers unzip it into their library, it would adhere to this standard. So they would just open Genesis 9 and then clothing, and eventually they'll find your vendor name, and then underneath there you have that outfit name. So to save it into such a location, we need to create that ourselves. So I'll close this down. I have one here that I've made earlier. I've just called it my product. That's an empty folder on the desktop, and I'll go and recreate this in a moment that you know exactly how that works. In it I have people, in it I have Genesis 9, in it I have clothing, in it I have Jabez Lewis as my vendor name, and then I have my garment, and here's my my garment here. And underneath here I might have something like materials. But it's important to understand that we need to create this thing ourselves. So it's just an empty folder. This is it. This is how it started out. It's called my product, and in it I've created all these things. In it here, this is a data folder that Dash Studio makes that the moment we save out the geometry. And I've also got a runtime folder. That's also something that I've made in case, and for distribution, it's likely that you have textures. So this is where your textures would go. So let me go and start totally from scratch here, and I'll call this !stream product, and it's totally empty. So I'm gonna have to go and make myself this hierarchy. I can use Finder or Windows Explorer to do that, or I can just use Dash Studio to do that. So remember, empty folder, ideally somewhere not on your desktop but in Dropbox. And then inside Dash Studio, you head over to the content library, and over on Dash Studio formats, right click on that and say add base directory. And then navigate to your empty folder like stream product and add it here. Open this up. And then at the bottom, we have that stream product. And now we can go and use Dash Studio to create all these folders here. Sadly, there's no one-click solution to do that. I believe, John, you do this with a template.
Yes. Yeah, we've created a zip file with lots of empty folders, essentially.
Like basically the ones I'm doing now. Yeah. Leave it empty, zip it up. If you have your second project, you just copy that, and then you have that folder hierarchy in place.
Yeah. Then we just, where it's got product name, where the folder should be the product name, we say, enter product name here. Something along those lines. Just rename the appropriate folders, and job's done.
So maybe rather than your name, I'll say vendor name. How's that? Vendor name. And then in vendor name, I'll just call it a product name. And it's important that we do that because on one hand, we can now go and select our shirt and then hit the, I was going to say hit the plus button. Sadly, we can't do that. We have to go to File, Save As, Support Asset, Figure Prop Asset. And now we have to go and find that folder again. So if I had been clever, I could have copied that, but I'm going to have to go into Stream Product here, and these are all the folders I've created in Dash Studio. People, Genesis 9, clothing, vendor name, product name, and I'm going to call this here classy shirt. And when I hit save, this dialog pops up. Can I zoom in? Yes, let me zoom in and not forget to zoom out. And this is the location of my asset directory. So I have multiple. And make sure if you save it out that it's not set to your like normal content library, because you want it to point at that empty folder that I've just made. So in my case, it's indeed this one, a desktop stream product. Then the vendor name, it'll be your vendor name, so I'll put my name here, and then the product name is something that your product is known as. Let's say classy shirt. Have I spelled that correctly? And then the item name, that I'm not sure why that says dash scenes. I'll just call that classy shirt.
That is just the default, I think.
Oh, okay. Then this here, content type, follower wardrobe dress. It's not a dress, so we can use a drop down here and select that it's a wardrobe. I suppose a shirt here. That'd be good.
It's just picked up it's a dress because we use the dress template.
Oh, that's where that comes from. Interesting. Category and compatibility base. I don't know if these are necessary, but we can set them.
Yeah, I think it's not necessary for it to work, but it's handy for the background of DAS to be able to search content.
Right. I'll put shirt here under wardrobe shirts, because that's what it is. Compatibility base, that is the figure compatibility base. So if you've made it for Genesis 9, it'll be Genesis 9. If you made it for Genesis 8, it'll be Genesis 8, or 8 female, 8 male. And wouldn't it be nice if we could search this? Can we? Because we can't. It's fine.
It would just find the first instance of Genesis 9.
Genesis 9, and then underneath here you'd have the other things. So if you've made something that's compatible with eyelashes or eyes or the mouth, you'd do that. If you make it like a tooth morph product, that'd be good for the mouth. So Genesis 9 is for us. And then set compatibility base is that, and set compatible with Genesis 9 base is correct. That's what we want. Compress, I'd leave that off.
I leave it off.
Then you can look at it in the text editor.
Yeah. There's many times that having an uncompressed file you can edit in a text editor has saved me hours of work.
Right.
Because you can just do a find and replace if you've put a wrong path in, or you accidentally saved your textures onto your desktop and not into your runtime textures folder.
Yes. The Changeling Chick was saying compatibility base is the figure and compatible with is the item. So yes, I understand that. So like, say you had made a clothing item and we're creating a texture set for that. We would say the texture set isn't compatible with the Genesis 9 figure. It'll be compatible with the classy shirt that we've just made. That's how that works, right?
Seems sensible.
Seems sensible, doesn't it? And that's, I suppose, that's maybe how smart content can infer this belongs with what, I suppose. The other way around, says Keith. Oh, okay. Compatibility base is what the product is and what you're making. Oh, I see. So this here would be, if I had it, this would be, I get you. That's interesting. This would be my classy shirt. And this is the figure that my classy shirt is compatible with. Gotcha. Hey, nice. We got it right though, right? Because our compatibility base is Genesis 9 in this case, right? I'm thinking. Or would we create our own Changeling Chick? We let QA do that. Oh, gotcha. Okay. It's my shirt. Okay, so in that case, this isn't correct. That compatibility base needs to be my shirt. See if we can do that. That's actually interesting because...
Why would it be compatible with your shirt? It is your shirt.
Yeah, but no. It's not my shirt. It's my product, isn't it? It's not just my shirt. My product could have 7 different things in there, and they would all be compatible with my product.
Yes, but this is a base product.
I've seen Chris do this, right? Chris does his own compatibility basis, and for him, it actually crashes often when he does that. So just something to be afraid of, be aware of. Create new sub-compatibility base. Ay, caramba. That is advanced stuff.
This is getting into the realms of magic now.
I love it. Changeling Chick makes a good point. Let's not worry about it for now. Let's just leave it on Genesis 9 and base, and we'll hit accept.
Leave it to QA.
Leave it to QA. Now you see what happens here. It goes and saves all these things out. So under the hood, what actually happens is that if you save your scene, just like here with File, Save As Scene, DAS Studio knows that the shirt is something that has no other place to go, and it goes and embeds the geometry in this file. As a result, your scene file is going to be a little bit larger. But that's not really what you want when you distribute your product. You could share this scene with someone else and the shirt would work, but it's not something that you can easily drag onto another figure from the content library. So what DAS Studio has done here, it's created my data folder. In it, it's created my JBrush Lewis folder, my vendor folder. In it, it's created this and another classy shirt here. And then in it, we see this, and that is the actual geometry that's saved out. And my if I reference that, it needs to be able to find this now. It's also saved some UV sets and morphs. So if we had adjustment morphs in here, we could save them into the same directory. These are all the morphs that it inferred, so they're all saved out. This one is the one that we've corrected, so these are all in there. So this is why it took a little, a few seconds to save all that out. This is what DAZ Studio's been doing there. And one last note here, if we go up to the top root here, we didn't deal with textures at all. But if you had any and you've made something in Marvelous Designer or in Substance Painter and you want to distribute those with your shirt, what you need to do is in this folder, and I've not actually zoomed out here, I'm going to go do that now so we see the whole screen. You need to go and create a texture, a runtime folder in here. It technically doesn't have to be called runtime, but you need to have a place for your textures to be. And because it goes back to Poser times, Poser always had it in here. You have to go runtime. In runtime, you have to have something called textures. In textures, just so that a large library can be organized, you go and create the same thing as before. You have your vendor name, ideally without spaces. But it doesn't matter if you have them. In the vendor name, you have your product name. So as you have as many products as John has, it's well worth organizing that. So then you have your product name, like classy shirt. And in here, you'll have the actual texture files. And remember this path here, because this is what you need to reference your textures with. So if you, sadly, we've destroyed the shirt in Marvelous Designer, but if we were to export textures out of that, and if we had done the UV mapping, you put your diffuse textures and your normal maps, you put them all in here, and then in DAZ Studio on the Surfaces tab, you would go and reference those textures from that folder. That's important. Yes. Because only then, oops, that's not what I meant. Only then will DAZ Studio be able to reference the right textures without error. So you go into this folder and then you put the base textures and all that on here.
Yeah, just make sure before you hook them up, you put them in that folder.
Yes.
Because changing them later is a pain.
Yes. Yes. Yes, and that is pretty much all there is to it. Once you've set that up, you are also advised to create another folder here, call that materials, and save the relevant material presets in here that you then hopefully have set up. So material presets, shaders if you include them with your products, those sort of things. If you did have poses in your product, you'd create another folder here, call it poses, and then you put the poses that you might want to include in here. And that's all there's to it. So you do that 400 times and it really grows on you, I suppose.
Yeah.
I'm just going to have a quick look on Discord if we have any questions here. There may be some. And then, then we can wrap it up. If you do have any questions, pop them in the chat now. This is a great time to do that. We almost came in on time, only 6 minutes late, so that's not bad. Oh, right. Yeah, Ted, are those DAZ Studio templates and the transfer utility, how do we export those things out from DAZ Studio so that we can use the templates inside Marvelous Designer? That is actually a very good question. Let's just quickly show that. So with the Genesis figure selected on the Parameters tab, under Utilities, you have the Preview Follower templates here. And if you pick the template that you want, you can export all of them. Let's say the Bodysuit Loose template, just as an example. Oh no, let's just use the Dress Long Loose template. This is how you load those in. And if you wanted to export this out, you go and select that. So it's a separate figure here in the Scene tab. So you select that, and then File, Export, Dress Loose template as OBJ in Blender scale, or in any other scale that you like. And then in Marvelous Designer, I'll just go and start a new thing here so we don't have to see that shirt anymore. Delete your avatar, and we'll go and import an OBJ. And this is the dress loose template. This is open avatar. Arrangement points and the fitting suit, try that. It sometimes fails if we have something that doesn't have legs or it doesn't have a head. Yeah. So it needs to be a real figure. If you export this figure, it'll work with creating the fitting suit. But with the templates, this is probably going to fail. Make sure this is not selected. Align bottom to ground must be not selected. Otherwise, yeah, major issues. It's trying, so that's nice. Maybe we're successful.
It's because it can't recognize it as a human shape because it hasn't got any legs. It's just got like a tube.
And it gives you this message that thinks, well, but it isn't a T or an A pose. Yeah, well, what it means is I don't know what the legs are. So there, it's tried. And then if you wanted to save it out, so I've got all mine here in the Genesis 9 category. You can go to File, Save as Avatar, and it'll go into the avatar folder, or mine is like the Genesis 9 folder. I'll just call this one Test. Takes a second to save it, and then you can bring it in directly from your library, and you don't have to import the OBJ every time. And if you do that and the fit suit is successful, then first of all, it does this little thumbnail arrangement here. I find that really cool. This is all something that Marvelous Designer just does. If you do it with the figures where it can infer a fit suit width, then it will do that. And it'll load that immediately. So if I use this is the Genesis 9 figure in the Genesis 8 shape. Well, that's quite nice as well. And that now has the arrangement points and the fit suit as well. So that makes fitting garments that you've made for Genesis 8 really, really easy. And then you can just morph this or just use the redraping to put it back to Genesis 9.
Just something I meant to mention earlier when we were going through the templates in the first place, there is an exceptionally handy one, which is the footwear template.
Oh, yes.
Because the footwear template only has one toe bone, which is what you want for the footwear. If you do the transfer utility on Genesis, you'll get 101 bones out there, all of which you'll have to deal with. But if you use the footwear template one, it's perfect.
I never thought about the bones. It is so powerful what you can do with these things.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Footwear. Let me just go to the bone editor. Haha. One foot bone. You still have the toes, which is nice. So you can get a toe movement there. You can test that. Yes, clever.
Yeah, I don't think there's any maps on the individual toes, just the main toe bone.
Mm-hmm.
So, with Genesis, the toe bone's got a map and the toes have got a map, and that causes chaos in rigging shoes.
Brad, I totally agree with you. Making clothing, it's got to be the most intimidating process ever. The amount of knowledge that you have to bring. You got to know about rigging and weight maps. You got to know about texturing. You got to know about UVs. You got to know about how to make clothing that goes around the figure. So those are all talents. That's already like up there. And then you have to understand how the whole follower mechanic works in that studio. It's like, so yeah.
That's not to say that, that is if you're making them for sale. If you're making them for yourself, there are so many shortcuts and tricks. I mean, you could go to Marvelous Designer, make a dress, then export a posed Genesis from DAS and import it as a morph into MD, and it will pose with the dress. And then you could just export it and put it onto the posed figure. It's not ideal.
But I've done it many times, and it's for you and for your render and for your scene, perfect workflow. Yes, it is,
absolutely.
It's wonderful. If you think, hey, that just, it doesn't fit properly, you just go export as OBJ, let Marvelous Designer drape it, import again, boom, it looks perfect. And you don't have to try to use defaults if you're in a rush, and if that promo really needs to look great. Touch up here with ZBrush. But again, it's the amount of knowledge and software library that you need to bring. But I agree, that's your original point, John, in which you said you got to make the decision: is this something you want to use for sale, or is this just for you and your own scenes? Because there's no shame in saying, hey, this is for my project, and it doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to do, it needs to satisfy my needs. Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, absolutely.
My friends, I think that was all for today. Tuck, I appreciate it. 10 years we've been working on this. It's awesome that that you're making the bridge available. 10 years is as long as I've been trying to make clothing on and off, and it's been intimidating. And notice how I have not released a clothing product yet. So maybe this year, hopefully this year, who knows. Thank you so much, John, for all your assistance and helpful tips. It's wonderful to have you.
Always happy to be helpful.
Thank you so much, Chad, for being here with us, and we're hoping we can do this again next month. Yes. Have a wonderful.
It's just two old men talking to each other.
Isn't that fun? This is why we're here for. Two old men talking to another.
Well, what old man? You're the old yet.
I'm so young. Yeah, I'm 51 this year. So is that young? I can't tell.
That milestone years ago.
It's true. Hey, my friends, thank you so much for being here, and we'll be back next month with something else. Have a wonderful rest of Saturday, and I'll see you very soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care, everyone. Thank you.